Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. And welcome to my talk on the best practices for monitoring and securing multi-cloud environments. My name is Ram Vaidyanathan, and I'm a cybersecurity and technology consultant here at ManageEngine. Now, as part of my role, I keep myself updated about the different ways in which attackers can take down organizations and also the ways in which organizations can defend themselves. I also play a part in the product roadmap and the capabilities we build into some of the security-related software that we make here at ManageEngine. Having said that, here is the agenda for today's session. We'll start with a brief history in time about the adoption of cloud. So we'll take a stroll down memory lane and talk about what really happened in the early days and where cloud is today. Then we'll talk about the multi-cloud and hybrid cloud advantage. We'll then go on to talk about the 6 cloud migration strategies, or the 6 Rs. Then we'll speak about cloud security challenges. And finally, we'll talk about closing the security gap with best practices. So yes, that's a broad agenda for the day. And without any further delay, let's start with topic number 1 on the agenda. Let's take a walk down memory lane and understand where cloud was and where exactly it is today. In 2002, Amazon launched AWS with the goal to enable developers to build innovative and entrepreneurial applications on their own. This was a revolutionary move at that time. Within 4 years of AWS being launched, Amazon introduced S3 and EC2. Now, while S3 offers storage for any type of object, EC2 allows users to rent or spin up virtual machines according to their own requirements. Google joined the bandwagon in 2008 with the introduction of Google App Engine, and Microsoft came in with Microsoft Azure in February 2010. In the following years, so we're talking about the last 12 years or so, we have had the IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, and Alibaba Cloud, to name just a few. Now, as the cloud started becoming more and more mainstream and streamlined, more organizations took to it for obvious advantages that it provides. The worldwide spending on cloud infrastructure increased from almost nothing in 2010, as you can see on the slide here, to close to $125 billion in 2020. In fact, in 2019, if you look at this graph, for the first time ever, worldwide spending on cloud infrastructure overtook worldwide spending on on-premises data centers. And now there is no looking back anymore for the cloud. The other thing that's happening is the high adoption of multi-cloud infrastructures. It's imperative that every organization uses a multi-cloud strategy today, especially given that today's business realities are a whole lot more complex. Using more than one cloud provider makes an organization more agile and flexible. It also increases scalability and leads to better performance. But one of the biggest benefits of a multi-cloud strategy is you can avoid vendor lock-ins. Today, 81% of organizations already have a multi-cloud strategy, or at least they are planning to have one. Then there's the adoption of the hybrid cloud, and this is happening at the same time. Now, this is a strategy of using both private and public clouds. At any time, an organization can move between the two depending on budget and needs. For certain parts of the business that require robustness, the organization can go with a public cloud. And for other parts of the business wherein the data is sensitive and the company needs more control, then it's going to go with a private cloud. So I would say personally that this is the way forward for most organizations. The hybrid cloud is the way to go. Now, as organizations start migrating to the cloud, they also need to decide about the cloud service models. Is it going to be software as a service, platform as a service, or infrastructure as a service? Depending upon the business case, this will vary, and each service model will give different levels of control to the organization. With SaaS, the organization only controls the data, whereas with IaaS, they have a whole lot more control. This varying levels of control is called the shared responsibility model. So SaaS is when the data is managed by the customers or the organization, and everything else is managed by the vendor. With platform as a service, it's the data and application that's managed by the organization. Now with IaaS, the organization actually has a whole lot of control. And this leads to the shared responsibility model for the security framework of a cloud environment. Now, for any organization, there'll be a combination of SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. And you can also obviously add the on-premises infrastructure to the mix here. Now, given all of these intricacies, how exactly can an organization migrate to the cloud? What strategy should they follow? Now, there are 6 different cloud migration strategies, or the 6 Rs. Now, these are rehost, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retire, and retain. With rehost, it's also called the lift and shift approach. You basically just lift servers from the current environment and shift it into the cloud. So that's called the lift and shift approach. Then with replatform, what you're basically doing is still lifting and shifting. So it's still lift and shift as rehost also tells you, but you're doing it with some optimizations. So a better way of rehosting is replatforming. Then you have refactor. So here you're re-architecting applications as you move them to the cloud. This involves working on the code base of the application. With repurchase, you stop the use of one application and move to a substitute available in the cloud. Now with retire, you totally just stop the use of certain applications as you find them unnecessary with your move to the cloud. And with retain, you retain some applications in your existing non-cloud environment because you feel that status quo, maintaining status quo is the way to go with these applications. These 6 cloud migration strategies are not mutually exclusive. You need to use a mix of these strategies depending on your cloud maturity and the needs of your business. Great. So far we have seen that it's vital to move to the cloud, making use of the right migration strategy. It's important to use a combination of SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. It's also important to adopt a multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategy. Now, all of these different things are bound to give some cloud security challenges. So these are some of the cloud security challenges that you may face. First up, you can have inadequate visibility into cloud user activity, especially across various cloud platforms. You can have the use of shadow applications. Shadow applications are those applications that are neither banned nor sanctioned by the organization. These are applications for which no official policy has been set by the organization. Now, use of shadow IT can be a huge problem. It can be a huge security threat. Then there's a problem of data being exfiltrated into the cloud with malicious intent. This is a classic case of an insider attack. You can have an employee who decides to upload some sensitive information of the organization into their personal cloud account. For example, let's say that a manager within the company is being let go, and to exact revenge on the organization, they take some of the sensitive files, maybe the entire customer database, and they upload it into their own personal cloud account. Now that's an insider threat or an insider attack. Likewise, you could have a case where an employee wants to start up on their own and they end up stealing some intellectual property of the organization. That's yet another use case, right? Or yet another case of data being exfiltrated into the cloud. The other thing is you also need to monitor events happening at different cloud vendors, including Azure, AWS, Salesforce, the Google Cloud Platform, and so much more. You can also add the challenge of monitoring your Azure Active Directory and Microsoft 365 environments to the mix here. So what are the best ways to solve these challenges? Well, you've got to adopt identity and access management best practices. You have to have multi-factor authentication configured. That's a given. And that's one of the first things that any organization have to do. Multi-factor authentication, not two-factor authentication, but multi-factor authentication. It's got to be configured. You'll need highly stringent password policies in place. You've got to adopt the zero trust implementation, which says never trust, always verify. Now, when you adopt zero trust, you also put into place the principle of least privilege within your network. You'll have policies in place for just in time and just enough access. The second thing is you'll need the ability to monitor activity across your multi-cloud, multi-service model and hybrid cloud environments. For example, You should make sure that there are no threat vectors when it comes to your S3 bucket activity and EC2 instances in AWS. Similarly, you should make sure that in your Azure environment, there are no unauthorized storage account permission changes or network security group changes. Now, these are things that can always go wrong. Attackers can do changes over there. So you've got to make sure that you're able to keep up with all of those unauthorized changes. In your Azure Active Directory, you have to ensure that unauthorized users are not being put into privileged roles, right? That's another thing that you've got to make sure. In case any of these things happen, you should get to know about it immediately and take the right response action. So, and this is again got to be immediate. Another best practice is to implement a CASB solution or a cloud access security broker. A CASB solution or cloud access security broker, where it sits at the midpoint between the users and the different cloud applications that they attempt to access. So every time a user wishes to access something on the cloud, they necessarily have to go through the CASB. And because it's positioned in the middle, the CASB can do things like authentication, authorization, event logging, policy setting, encryption, and so much more. Now, there are 3 ways to implement a CASB. You can use the forward CASB, the forward proxy method rather. Then there's the reverse proxy method. And finally, you have the API scanning method as well. So having an effective CASB solution can help you perform deep packet inspection on cloud-bound traffic as well. So having this in place is very, very critical in this day and age, especially when so many people are working from remote locations. And there are so many cloud-based applications out there that employees are using on a day-to-day basis. So yes, this is what I wanted to share with you in today's session. Thank you all so very much. My name is Ram Vaidyanathan, and you all have a great rest of the summit. Thank you so much.